Water is a very important part of Super Mario Sunshine. In fact, the entire game is built around using water in some capacity. You need to use it to solve puzzles, reach higher areas, and even clean off the island's dirty inhabitants. Water is a fundamental part of this game, and due to how strict Super Mario Sunshine is, there's really no way of getting around that. But what if we tried to? What if we tried to beat Super Mario Sunshine using the least amount of water possible? What would that even look like? Well, you're about to find out, because over the last month or so, a player by the name of Warspyking wanted to answer that very question. Exactly how much water does it take to beat Super Mario Sunshine? But this question seems impossible to answer, right? How would you ever measure how much water you actually use? That's not a thing you can actually do in the game. Well, using Dolphin's memory engine, Warspyking, with the help of Sunshine speedrunner NokiDoki, was able to single out the exact memory address that the game uses to keep track of how much water Flood has. So by using this and some insane speedrunning strats, he was able to find out what the absolute lowest amount of water needed to beat Super Mario Sunshine is. And it turns out the amount is absolutely insane. It's less than half a tank. In fact, way less. I'm Dan from Press A, and this is How Much Water Does It Take to Beat Super Mario Sunshine? Guys, if we can get 10,000 likes on this video, I will stop saying Mario for good, okay? I'll start saying Mario. Then maybe all of you would stop making fun of me. Okay, so before we get into the run, let's quickly go over the rules set out for this challenge. Obviously, any water that is shot through Flood's nozzle will count towards the total water used in this run. Doesn't matter if it's a spray nozzle, hover nozzle, rocket nozzle, or the turbo nozzle. If it comes out of Flood, we are counting it. However, this does not include water that doesn't come from Flood. So stuff like the water barrels thrown by Mario won't actually count towards our total. We are only counting the water that comes out of Flood. That's it. Also, Warspyking isn't going to be 100%ing this game. He's just trying to beat it, which means he has to collect the 7th shine in each one of the game's 7 worlds, then go on to defeat Bowser. And this will not be done using Ace because Ace is boring. Okay, with that being said, let's hop into the challenge and see how much water it takes to beat Super Mario Sunshine. So, funnily enough, Warspy comes across maybe one of the hardest challenges in the run right off the bat. This polluted piranha plant. Normally to defeat these guys, you need to spray their goop pile until they wake up, then spray them in the mouth 3 times. The problem with this guy in particular is that there's no secondary water source that can be used to damage it, so Warspy needs to use Flood. Now, if he was to just use Flood the normal way and spray the plant consistently until it wakes up, he would waste a ton of water, which is obviously something he doesn't want to do. So instead, he relies on a technique that will basically be relied on for the entire run. The ability to spray exactly 1 droplet or 1 unit of water using Flood. The way that Warspy achieves this is by spraying with Flood for exactly 3 frames while Flood is asleep. Flood basically has 2 states in this game, awake and asleep. Flood falls asleep when you don't use him for a bit. So when you press the right trigger, Flood will go from the sleep state to the awakened one. And if you don't use him for a bit, he will go back to sleep. These 2 states are important because if you want to spray exactly 1 unit with Flood, he has to be asleep first. If he's awake, even if you hold the button down for 3 frames, you won't be able to spray exactly 1 unit. However, even doing this won't guarantee that you spray exactly 1 drop. Annoyingly enough, Flood seems to have something built into him that will vary the amount of water that's sprayed even if you hold the button down for only 3 frames. Luckily though, by swapping the nozzles before we spray, we can actually stop this variance. So to spray 1 unit consistently, we would have to do something like this. Press the button for 3 frames, which will spray 1 unit because Flood's already asleep. Then we would have to wait for Flood to go back to sleep, swap the nozzles to stop the variance, then hold the button for 3 frames again. This right here is how you spray 1 drop of water consistently. And you would think that we could use it to kill the piranha plant pretty easily, especially since the plant has 255 HP and Warspyking has a potential to deal 16 damage per droplet of water. This would mean he would only have to spray it 16 times to kill it. But unfortunately, it's not that easy. because the way the polluted piranha takes damage is kind of weird. Basically, every quarter frame for 4 frames, the game is checking if the piranha plant has been hit by water. If it has been, it'll subtract 16 health from its pool, but if it hasn't, it'll actually start to heal the plant. We're not sure if it heals it fully or just by 16, but either way, this healing makes it so you can't just sit here and take as long as you want, spamming one droplet over and over again. To really put this in perspective, Super Mario Sunshine runs at 30 frames a second. So 4 frames would only be 0.133 seconds. So like roughly 1/10 of a second. You have a 1/10 of a second to damage this thing before it starts healing. Which sounds completely broken until you realize the average player would just continuously spray this thing until it woke up, giving it no chance to heal. But in a minimum water run where you don't want to continuously spray, it causes a huge issue. Theoretically, you should be able to kill it in 16 droplets of water. But again, the way damage is calculated on this thing makes it really hard to do that. Because each droplet of water doesn't simply deal 16 damage. Remember, every quarter frame, the game is checking if the plant got hit by water. If it did, it'll take 16 damage. But say if you hit it with 2 droplets of water, it wouldn't magically take 32 damage, it would still only take 16 and the other droplet would be wasted. So basically, every 4 frames, or every 1/10 of a second, you would have to hit it with a single drop of water, making sure to never overlap them. All while dealing with the whole waking up flood thing and swapping nozzles to get rid of the water variants. All of these things added together make for an absolute nightmare of a fight. Warspyking himself even said this is the part of the run he has the least confidence in, because no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get that perfect theoretical number of 16 units. The best he could get was 30, and this was achieved basically by brute force. Warspyking just kind of spammed as fast as he could while using the least amount of water possible. As you can see, he's able to use 1 droplet right off the bat, but every subsequent shot is 3, because he doesn't have time to allow Flood to go back to sleep. But yeah, after a couple hours of brute forcing, the lowest number he was able to get was 30 units. Only 14 off the theoretical best that probably isn't even possible to do by a human. So as terrible as the first half of the fight is, the second half is thankfully a lot easier. Like I mentioned before, you have to spray water in his mouth 3 times to kill him. But there's no weird calculations this time. It's actually very simple. If any amount of water hits the inside of its mouth, it takes damage. So all Warspy had to do is spray 1 droplet in his mouth 3 times and it goes down. Meaning that the whole fight took 33 units of water to complete. Which may seem like a lot until you realize that Flood's entire tank can hold 10,000 units. So we essentially used 0.3% of his total tank to take down one of the toughest enemies in this run. If that's not a good sign of how this run's going to go, I don't know what is. Hilariously enough though, the very next thing we have to do is kill another polluted piranha plant. To unlock the game's first world, Bianco Hills, you have to first kill this piranha plant and then take out Shadow Mario. So you would think it would just take another 30 units to take out this piranha, right? Well, this time he can actually use some water barrels located around Delfino Plaza to bring this number a little lower. By placing 2 barrels by the plant, using a trick that allows him to burst them open on the spot, and using the same spray technique he used against the first plant, he's able to take it down in 20 units instead of 30. The way he breaks open the barrels like this is by running at them and pressing B at the exact right time, which causes Mario to dive at them, bonking against their sides, exploding them in the process. For some weird reason, grabbing an object takes precedence over bonking into an object in this game. And the button to dive just so happens to be the same button as the button to grab things. So when he dives into a barrel, Mario bonks against it, but on the same frame he grabs it, canceling out the bonk. This destroys the barrel, but allows Mario to keep moving like normal. Once the plant was awakened, he was able to use 3 barrels to kill it, saving 13 units of water in the process, and bringing our total up to 53. So, like I mentioned before, after killing the piranha plant, you have to take out Shadow Mario by chasing him down and spraying him with water. To do this, Warspy first attempted to spray him over and over again using single droplet shots, but since Shadow Mario has 64 HP and needs to be damaged 1 more time after his HP is gone to actually drop him, it took Warspy 65 units of water to actually do it. This is obviously pretty good, but believe it or not, he found a better way to do it. If you didn't know, when Mario gets within a certain distance of Shadow Mario will run away along a set path. So by bringing Shadow Mario to where the entrance of Noki Bay is, then jumping over here to scare him back towards Bianco Hills, and doing it one more time, Warspy can set up Shadow Mario in an infinite loop that brings him right by this fountain every time. Why is this important, you may ask? Why is it important that he brings Shadow Mario right by this fountain? Well, because when Mario gets wet in this game, he can actually splash enemies with the water that falls off his body. Yeah, somehow back in 2002, Nintendo was able to accurately model water falling off of Mario's body. It's one of those things that's so crazy that it's almost hard to believe. But believe it, because it's true. It can be used to damage enemies, as you've seen here, and even get rid of goop. In fact, this is how I completed the Goopy Inferno Shrine back when I was a kid, because I had no idea how to do it the actual intended way. I feel like nobody actually completed that level in the intended way, but either way, by splashing water from the fountain onto Shadow Mario, Warspy was able to take him out without using Flood a single time. And yes, as you can probably believe, this took a very long time to do. So at this point in the game, you're supposed to head to Bianco Hills, kill a third polluted piranha plant, which will raise this ramp up, allowing you to get the shine and make a path to the world's second shine down with PD Piranha. But Warspy isn't going to do any of that, because you can actually skip this first shine pretty easily. Instead of killing the piranha plant, Warspy jumps on this rope and dives onto the unfinished bridge. Then he performs a couple of nice jumps to get through these vines without Flood. And when he reaches these vines, he performs a Y-turn to get around them completely floodless. Normally when you dive in this game, you can't change the direction you're going. But if you press Y mid-dive, you'll be able to change Mario's direction in mid-air, allowing you to do stuff like this. By doing this, Warspy can get to the top of the windmill without using any water and meet up with PD Piranha, who is for some reason there ready to fight him even though he's still on Shine 1 and not on Shine 2. Now, the PD Piranha fight is pretty unfortunate, mostly because Warspy is forced to use a lot of water. To kill PD normally, you have to fill up his belly with water 3 times and ground pound his belly each time you do it. The problem is, to fill up his belly, it takes 250 units of water, and there's really no way around this. It doesn't matter if you spray single droplets or spray in a continuous stream. Nothing makes this faster or more efficient. Once you hit 250 units, his belly gets full, and that's it. Warspy just has to make sure he doesn't miss any droplets, and all 250 units go into PD's mouth, which is obviously easier said than done. But after a bunch of tries, he was able to get the timing down and kill PD with 750 units of water, bringing our total up to 830 units. Now, you're probably thinking, wait, I thought you had to collect these 7 shines in each world to unlock the Bowser fight. Since we skipped the first shine, wouldn't that be a problem? Well, you actually don't have to collect 7 shines in total, you just have to collect the 7th shine. And since this game never expects you to collect shines out of order, it just unlocks Shine 3 for us, even though we are still missing Shine 1. This differs from a game like Mario 64 that won't let you choose the next star unless you completed all the previous ones. This is because Sunshine is a very linear game and it expects you to do all the shines in order. So it assumes if you collected Shine 2, you must have collected Shine 1 and will unlock Shine 3 for you. Speaking of Shine 3, Warspy completes it with ease by doing a sick wall jump off this pillar, getting himself to the area you normally need Flood for. Then with a spin jump, he's able to make it to the secret level and complete it without any water because that's how you normally do it. For red coins around Windmill Village, Warspy continues to bring out the sick movement by spin jump wall kicking up to this wall to get this coin, dive and ground pounding to grab this one, and finally a spin jump wall kick Y-turn to grab the ledge of this house, which allows him to wall kick up to the final red coin. Shine 5 is another fight against PD Piranha, except this time he flies into the air instead of just staying on the ground, which seems like it would make things harder, but you can actually beat this fight with 0 water, all thanks to these little guys. If you didn't know, these guys are called poinks, and they will latch onto Flood, fill with water, and shoot off if you press the R button. Doing this usually takes up water, but if you do a quick R press, you can shoot off the points without using any at all. So he can first start off the fight by waking up PD, then with a quick R press and absolute snipe, Warspy is able to knock PD out of the air without any water. Now, even though these guys don't take any water to use, they actually have some water stored inside of them. So if you shoot them at Petey while he opens his mouth, it'll fill up his belly and allow you to kill him without using any water. Shine Sits is pretty trivial. The only part you really need flood for is to get up on this ledge near the logs. But by swimming through the poison goop and performing a nice dive jump, Warspy is able to get up there with no flood at all. Finally, for Shine 7, he does basically the same thing he did to take out Shadow Mario in Delfino Plaza. He lures Shadow Mario to the water over and over again, then does a spin jump, dive, ground pound combo to splash him with the water that falls off Mario, granting him the 7th shine of the world. Meaning, the only water he had to use in this entire level was the 750 units needed to beat Petey Piranha. So after Bianco Hills was completed, the next level Warspy tackled was Rico Harbor, a level that is unfortunately guarded by another one of these stupid plants. Warspy basically handled it the same way he did with the Bianco one, but with a few key differences. Since the water barrels he used for the first one are too far away from this plant, he can't actually use them to kill it once it wakes up. And since this one has 2 phases, he would have to use 6 droplets instead of 3 to actually kill it. He can, however, bring a barrel over here to wake it up, which means he only has to use 26 units from Flood, but with these 6 units needed to kill it, it brings his total up to 32, and our total for the run up to 835. But yeah, with the plant now defeated, he can enter Rico Harbor and start getting some more shines. So the first shine in Rico Harbor is Gooper Blooper Breaks Out. The shine usually involves the player fighting Gooper Blooper by first spraying his face, then ripping off his tentacles, and finally pulling his nose. Do this twice, and the boss is defeated. You can actually skip ripping off his tentacles, but to pull his nose, you have to clean his face off first, which means we have to use some water. But thankfully, we only have to use 1 droplet, as the cleaning effect on his face is actually tied to the length of his shaking animation and not how much water is actually used. So Warspy hits him with 1 droplet, which starts the animation, then he grabs onto his nose, which prolongs it long enough to clean off his face. As cool as this is though, Warspy actually did one better. It turns out there's an invisible water barrel stored in the out of bounds area in Rico Harbor. By getting this barrel and throwing it at Gooper Blooper, he can skip having to use Flood to defeat Blooper's first phase. After the first phase is done, Blooper will shoot out some more goop, dirtying his face up all over again. But if you pull off a tentacle right as he's doing this animation, it'll cancel it and allow you to kill Gooper without using any water at all. Also, if you're wondering how he got up to the fight without Flood, he just jumps on the smokestack and does a spin dive jump up to the scaffolding. Shine 2, Blooper Surf and Safari, requires no water and can be completed the same way you would do it in a casual playthrough. Same with Shine 4, as you can just wall kick up the scaffolding and enter the secret level. Shine 3 is also pretty easy. You just have to do a couple tricky jumps from these grates, but other than that, getting to these shine by jumping on the trampolines is totally doable. Episode 5, Gooper Blooper Returns, is essentially identical to the first fight, but we don't have access to the invisible barrel because the fight takes place on this elevated platform. So 1 unit of water is needed to clean his face the first time, bringing our total up to 836. Thankfully though, the next episode, Red Coins in the Water, is easy to do without Flood, since you're just riding around on these bloopers collecting red coins. Unfortunately though, Episode 7 isn't so easy. Unlike the other Shadow Mario fights, there isn't a spot where we can consistently lure him to splash him with water. There is one spot you can splash him, but you only have 1 chance to do it. So basically, what Warspy did was get the biggest splash he could while Shadow Mario was at the bottom, then when he migrated to the upper portion of the level, Warspy pelted him with 1 droplet sprays until he went down. The biggest splash he was able to get him with was 22 damage, and since Shadow Mario has 64 HP, plus the extra 1 to bring him down, it meant that Warspy had to use 43 units of water to bring him down. Which means our total has now gone up from 836 to 879. But what it also means is that we're done with Rico Harbor and can move on to Gelato Beach. Normally, to unlock Gelato Beach, you have to kill another polluted piranha plant. Yes, I'm serious. For some reason, this game is obsessed with them. Fortunately for us though, there's actually a trick you can do to skip the entire fight completely. As Warspy shows here, you can do what's called an infinite wall kick to climb all the way up this wall. Infinite wall kicks are pretty complicated, but they're basically done by spinning into a wall, using Y-cam to jump off of it, spinning again, and finally using Y-cam to jump off a second time. If you do all of these inputs correctly, you can infinitely climb a wall like this to whatever height you want. So Warspy uses infinite wall kicks to climb the wall, then once he's high enough, dives off and ground pounds so he can hit the switch that's usually atop the beach's lighthouse. You're normally supposed to use the rocket nozzle to jump on top of the lighthouse, then use it again to break the switch. But for whatever reason, even though the lighthouse hasn't spawned yet, the button is still there. So he's able to hit it and spawn the shine. All he has to do now is infinite wall kick up the wall a second time, dive off again, and grab the shine. Upon grabbing the shine, the lighthouse spawns, killing the plant in the process and unlocking Gelato Beach for us. But don't get too attached to Gelato Beach just yet, as it's gonna be the level we spend the least amount of time in. Remember how I mentioned back in Bianco Hills that if you beat an episode in this game, it will unlock every episode before and one after it? Well, we can abuse this fact to an extreme degree in Gelato Beach by performing a trick called Gelato Beach Skip, specifically the hoverless version. You see, Gelato Beach has something that no other level in this game does. Its final shine that you're supposed to obtain in episode 8, the Watermelon Festival, is available to get in every mission. Well, I say available, but it's really not. It's locked inside of this glass cylinder and can only be obtained when you bring this guy the giant watermelon, which can only be done in episode 8. But by performing Gelato Beach Skip, you can use a coconut to clip through the roof of the cabana and hover to the inside of the glass cylinder. Obviously, this uses water, so it's a no-go for us. But this is where the hoverless version comes in. If we place that same coconut inside of the cabana instead of on the roof, we can jump in between it and the cylinder, which clips us through the glass and allows us to ground pound grabbing the shine as Warspy shows here. It is worth noting that this trick is extremely precise. Mario's position is unit perfect, and his angle and the coconut location basically have to be perfect as well. Turns out it's not easy getting shines without water. But either way, since this is supposed to be the last shine in the level, it unlocks all previous shines for us, including the one we really care about, episode 7. This is where Warspy's good luck comes to an end though. Even though there's so much water in Gelato Beach, you can't actually get any of it on Shadow Mario. He starts just a little bit too far away from the water to actually splash him, and no matter where you chase him, he never gets any closer to any body of water. Meaning that Warspy has to spend 65 units taking him out, which now brings our total to 944 units. Next up, we have Peanut Park, where Warspy tried to tackle the world's first shine, Mecha Bowser appears. Normally, to get this shine, you need to shoot these rockets at Mecha Bowser to kill him. Unfortunately, the only way to shoot these rockets is with Flood, which means shooting these rockets is going to take water. And for some reason, even if you input the R button for only one frame to shoot one drop of water, there will still be extra water used when shooting off the rockets. So no matter how little water we use, we still have to use some if we want to shoot these things off. Or at least that would be the case if it wasn't for spam sprays. If you hold down the R button and press A, Mario will perform what's called a spam spray. This will shoot out a bunch of water in one big burst, kind of like a shotgun. One really interesting thing about spam sprays is that if you continue to hold down the R button after the initial burst, Flood will continue to pump, but no water will come out. This might not seem that important, but it actually makes defeating Mecha Bowser without any water completely doable. You see, if you shoot the rocket off with a spam spray, the initial burst will be blocked by the rocket, causing you to lose no water. And since you physically can't shoot any more water after the first burst, you don't lose any after the rocket's been fired. Meaning that Warspy can shoot off rockets and defeat Mecha Bowser without losing any water at all. Shine 2, the Beach Cannon secret, is surprisingly easy to do without water. Normally, you would need to spray these bombs the mole throws out to disarm them, which will allow you to throw them back. But with a well-timed jump, you can make it inside the mole's hatch before it closes, gaining you access to the secret level, which can obviously be done without water. Shine 3 doesn't involve any crazy glitches or strategies, just some really cool movement. Like this spin jump Y-turn wall kick combo to get this coin, or wall kicking off of these pillars to get this one. Or even the spin jump double wall kick combo with this one. As hard as this movement may seem, it's all completely possible to do floodless when you actually have skills at the game, unlike me. For Shine 4, you need to save these sunflowers by spraying these Snoozakoopas and ground pounding their stomachs. Unfortunately, Warspy can't avoid using water here, but what he can do is use the least amount possible. But he's gonna have to bust out some new tech to actually do it. Warspy has to first use the method to spray one droplet of water by spraying for one frame while Flood is asleep. If he was to then wait for Flood to fall back asleep, then swap nozzles, the Snoozakoopas would have forgotten about him and he would have to start all over. It simply takes too long to do it the normal way. So instead of waiting for Flood to fall back asleep, he does another one frame spray and swaps to the hover nozzle at basically the same time. Since he's already sprayed once and Flood is awake, this would normally cause him to spray 3 droplets. But since he swapped to the hover nozzle, it cuts the spray short and allows him to only spray 1. Then he does the same thing, but in reverse. He swaps back to the spray nozzle and does another one frame spray at the same time. Since it takes 2 frames to swap from the hover nozzle to the spray nozzle, it cancels out the first 2 droplets and sprays the last one on the last frame. This allows him to spray 3 droplets in quick succession, waking up the Snoozakoopa with a hilariously low amount of water. Once he has one woken up, he can use it to push the others into the water, waking them up without using any of his own. Which means the Shine is doable with only 3 units of water, bringing our total to 947 units. For Shine 5, Warspy watts around the back of the Ferris wheel and performs a Y-turn dive to make it to this grating. Then he jumps off of it, performs a wall kick, and grabs a different grate above his head. Now he can perform another wall kick to get to the top of the Ferris wheel, which allows him to knock the Koopa off and get himself the Shine. Doing this allows him to skip the part where you need to use Flood to flip these panels to climb up the back of the Ferris wheel. Shine 6, the Yoshi Go Round's secret, requires no water and can be done the same way you would play it casually. Finally, we come to the level's 7th Shine, another Shadow Mario chase. Thankfully, this one can be done without using Flood. As Warspy shows here, all you have to do is lure him by the water and splash him over and over again until he falls. So, once you're done with Peanut Park, specifically Peanut Park Episode 4, Shadow Mario will spawn in Delfino Plaza holding a Yoshi egg. You're supposed to defeat Shadow Mario and use the Yoshi born from the egg to eat this pineapple so you can access the game's next level, Serena Beach. Now, Warspy could use the same technique he used earlier to take out Shadow Mario without any flood water, but there's actually a faster way to enter the level. By using a fruit, you can clip through this roof, then with a well-timed spin jump, as Warspy shows here, you can hit the loading zone for the level and take it without ever removing the pineapple. Now, if you're familiar with Serena Beach, you know exactly what's coming next. The Manta Storm Shine may be one of the worst shines in this game. You have to spray this Manta, which will then break up into smaller pieces that you also have to spray and kill. Now, as bad as it may be casually, it's especially bad for this challenge because the Mantas don't take any damage from being splashed. The only way they take damage is being hit by water from Flood. So you would think we would have to use a ton of water to get this shine, right? Well, what if I told you that Warspyking got it in only 8 droplets? Yes, 8. It doesn't seem possible, right? How could he kill this Manta and all these little ones that spawn after in only 8 droplets? Well, he uses a pretty obscure mechanic in this game to completely cheese the fight. Most people don't know this, but when you grab a shine in this game, it'll actually kill all enemies around it so they don't interrupt the shine grab animation or stick around during the cutscene. This is actually why the polluted piranha died earlier when we grabbed the shine above the lighthouse. So theoretically, if we could get a shine and play this cutscene near the Manta, we could kill it without any water. The problem is though, there are no shines outside the hotel. At least none that are available in episode 1. We could theoretically get the 100 coin shine, but like, look, there aren't 100 coins out here. There's like 20 at most. Except that's completely not true. Believe it or not, there's actually 101 coins outside the hotel. Most of them are just buried underground and require spraying to reveal them. Now, like I said, there's 101 coins in this level. The unfortunate part is 9 of them require Flood to get. However, we only need 100 coins. So we only actually need 8 of the 9, which all require 1 droplet each, which is how we get to 8 in total. Warspy actually did a lot of pretty sweet long-range splashes to get a bunch of coins you would otherwise need Flood for. So this number honestly could have been a lot worse. But yeah, with a lot of patience and some pretty slick moves, and 8 droplets of water, Warspy was able to get 100 coins and spawn the shine. The only problem is when you grab a 100 coin shine in this game, unlike the 100 coin star in Mario 64, it will actually boot you out of the level. So even though we killed the manta ray, it wouldn't matter because we would get booted out of the level and be unable to collect its shine. The good thing is though, is that there's a way around this. If you grab the shine and pause the game as soon as you touch it, you can kill the manta without being immediately booted from the level. Now, if you leave the game paused, this little delay between the last manta dying and the hotel rising up from the ground will play in the background. Once that delay is over, this cutscene will play and Mario will be teleported right in front of the hotel. This teleportation will actually cancel the shine cutscene completely, meaning that Mario can kill the manta, not get booted from the level, and collect the shine. But since we had to use 8 droplets of water to get it, it now brings our total up to 955. So that was pretty complicated, but Shine 2 in Serena Beach will be way easier. Normally you're supposed to spray these boos to give yourself a platform to get up to the secret level, but with some sick spin jump wall kits, we can do it completely floodless, and again, obviously the secret level is completely doable without water. Shine 3, Mysterious Hotel Delfino, would normally take a bunch of water to complete, as you have to spray this painting, these shutters, these boos, this door, and finally this poster. This all gains you access to the pineapple, which allows you to grab Yoshi and get the shine. Thankfully though, Warspy can skip all of this by using a very common speedrunning trick. By bringing some bananas to the top floor and bat flipping towards the glass, you can throw the bananas at the height of the jump, which will clip you through the wall and allow you to get the shine without having to do any of the stuff I mentioned before. To get the secret of Casino Delfino shine, you must get 777s across these 2 slot machines, then turn all of these panels until they create a shine. This is all done by using Flood, which would obviously take a lot of water to do. But instead, we can use a trick called Hoverless Casino Skip to avoid doing any of it. As shown here, Warspy gets to the top of this ledge, performs a spin jump into an infinite wall kick, then grabs onto this invisible ledge here, side shuffles and jumps into the area where the pipe is that leads to the secret level. Shine 5 basically plays out like it normally would. The only difference is that Warspy has to use 1 droplet of water to get King Boo to spin the slots, and he needs perfect RNG to get the lowest amount of drops required, which is 5. You need to hit him 3 times to kill him, which right there uses 3 droplets. And even with the best of luck, there's always a forced extra cycle after you hit him, which is where the other 2 droplets come in. This now brings our total to 960 units of water. Now, Serena 6 is really weird. This is the episode where you're tasked with cleaning this electric group off Serena Beach in a certain amount of time. Warspy theorized that it would be possible to do this with just splashes. The only problem is that you don't have enough time to do it. Removing the goop with splashes is extremely tedious and would take way longer than the 3 minutes the game gives you to complete this mission. So unfortunately, it's not really an option. Neither is cleaning off the beach with Flood, because that would take an insane amount of water. The worst part though is that there really isn't an answer to this, or at least one that's consistent. Because there is a way to do Serena 6 without Flood. It just takes an incredibly rare glitch to happen that nobody really understands or even knows how to replicate. On the 3D All-Stars version specifically, when you spawn into episode 6, sometimes the game will just glitch out and give you the win even though you've done nothing. You can see here in this clip that at 2 minutes and 58 seconds, the game makes the sound it normally would when you finish cleaning off the beach. Even though the player, Melt3429, basically hasn't even moved yet. Now obviously, this does feel a little cheap because nobody even knows how to replicate this. It just randomly happens sometimes. But we are trying to figure out the theoretical lowest amount of water needed to beat this game, and this is theoretically possible, so even though it feels kind of icky, you can technically beat episode 6 of Serena Beach with 0 water. Now for the final shine of the level, and big surprise, it's another Shadow Mario fight. This one works the same as all the others, you just have to lure him by the water and splash him until he dies. Next up, we have my favorite level in the game, Noki Bay. For the first shine, Uncork the Waterfall, you're usually supposed to navigate up this cliff face with Flood. Then spray these bombs and throw them back at the mole to uncork the waterfall. Going up the cliff face with Flood is pretty easy with a well-timed spin jump here, then a wall kick off this wall into a dive Y-turn to reach the ledge. Then another well-timed spin jump off this wheel, and finally a double jump wall kick to grab the last ledge. Now all Warspy has to do is jump on the cork, lure the bombs around to the other side where the cork is a bit higher, allowing it to explode and damage the mole, which uncorks the waterfall without any water. Episode 2 is another episode that requires a lot of water casually. Since you have to spray these ruins to open a path through the cliffside, then use a bunch more to defeat Blooper. To avoid this, we could use a trick called Spring Clip, which involves moving this spring over to this corner and dropping it, which clips you out of bounds and causes you to fall into the tomb where the shine is. The only bad part about this method, at least for us, is you have to spray the spring to be able to pick it up, which obviously would require some water. But by jumping off this cliff and diving into a seam in the level geometry, we can actually bypass any need to use the spring and fall into the tomb completely floodless. Shine 3 you think would actually be pretty hard, as you're supposed to use Flood as a jetpack to grab each of these red coins. But if you fall straight towards the first red coin, then perform a Y-turn to get to the second one, this shine is basically yours because every other red coin can be obtained by taking this updraft in the bottle and just floating down on top of them. Now, Shine 4, Ely Melt's Dentist, was really difficult for Warspy to measure how much water was actually needed. To get the shine, you need to clean every one of the eel's teeth with Flood, and there's really no way of getting around that. So what Warspy had to do was find out the absolute minimum amount of water that it took to clean off each tooth, which actually ended up being pretty difficult. This is mostly because the whole fight takes place underwater, so when you spray the eel, your tank instantly gets refilled, and finding out how much water you used is basically impossible. So Warspy had to get a little creative. By modding the game, he was able to remove the water from the eel fight and find out exactly how much was needed to clean each tooth, which turned out to be 49 units. Since the eel has 8 teeth, it would mean you would need to use 392 units to clean off every tooth in the eel's mouth. He was able to confirm that shooting 1 unit of water at a time was possible underwater, so this would be completely doable, even though it would be tedious as hell. He was also able to confirm that getting infinite air was possible by getting eaten by the eel and then popping the bubbles that came out of its mouth, which refill your air bar, which basically acts as your health bar in these underwater sections. So doing this fight in 392 units of water is totally doable. It would just take forever. That was, however, a lot of water to kill the eel, and now brings our total to 1352. Or around a tenth of Flood's tank. Next up, we have the race against Spantissimo, which is basically the exact same as a casual experience and is very easy to do without water. Same with Shine 6, with the only real difference being this tricky dive jump needed to reach the last rope right before the shell's entrance. This leads to another secret level, which is obviously doable without Flood. To end off the level, we have another Shadow Mario chase, which is basically handled the exact same way as we've handled all the other ones. Warspy just lures him by the water over and over again and splashes him with the water that comes off of Mario's body. Now we arrive at the game's final level, Pianta Village. To get there, you normally have to use the rocket nozzle and blast on top of the Shine Tower to enter this pipe. But if you enter the sewer, blast out of it and do a wall kick, here you can get behind it. Then with a couple of spin jump wall kicks, you can get to the upper portion here. Finally, with a spin jump Y-turn wall kick, you can grab this ledge and make it to the top without any water used. For the first shine of the level, all Warspy has to do is anchor these chomplets and lure them into the water. You're normally supposed to spray them, grab their tail, and shoot them in there, but this works just as well. However, grabbing their attention can be a little finicky because of a glitch that causes the chomplet's aggro timer to be way higher than it should be. The chomplets won't notice Mario until this timer hits 0. So it may take a little bit, but they will notice you eventually. The second shine in the level is just another Pantissimo race, which can be done without water fairly easily. So Shine 3, the Goopy Inferno, can obviously be done without water. Well, at least until you get to a certain point. If you didn't know, this is the level where you lose Flood and have to navigate the underside of the village to get him back. Obviously, this part is doable without water because the game expects you to not have Flood in the first place. But as soon as you get him back, this episode becomes a problem. The game wants you to use him to get on top of this golden mushroom, which thankfully can be avoided by doing a triple jump Y-turn combo. The problem is, once we get up there, we still have to clean off the mayor to get the shine. And for whatever reason, one spray droplets don't clean off NPCs very well. Or spam sprays for that matter. The most efficient way Warspy found to do it was just spray them with a consistent stream, and the lowest amount of water he could get by using this method was 126 units. Unfortunately, there really doesn't seem to be a better way to do this. So we have to bite the bullet and take the 126 units of water added to our total, leaving our total now at 1478. The next shine is the Chain Chomp's Bath, and this one can be done pretty easily by waiting for the Chain Chomp to walk by the pool, throwing a water barrel at him to cool him off, then dragging him into the water, nabbing yourself the shine. Next up, we have everyone's favorite episode in the game, the one with these fucking chucksters. Obviously, you don't need any water to complete the chuckster section itself, but you do need some to get there. Or at least you need some juice too. You're supposed to navigate the underside of the village with Yoshi and use him to destroy this yellow thing blocking your path. I haven't really mentioned it yet because it hasn't come up, but Warspy did count Yoshi's juice as water during this run, so he avoided using it as much as possible. So instead of using it, he falls off of this mushroom and does a dive ground pound combo and quits its session, which gets him stuck in the collision of the mushroom. Since he's basically out of bounds now, he can dive into the mushroom and hit the loading zone for the secret level. Just like the 6th shine in Serena Beach, the next episode involves cleaning up some goop in a limited amount of time. This time though, it's not just the goop you have to clean off, it's the piantas stuck inside of it. Obviously, this is bad for us because we just found out that cleaning off a pianta takes 126 units of water, and there's a lot of piantas in this level that need cleaning. There are a bunch of water barrels that infinitely respawn, but just like in Serena 6, the time limit makes using anything but Flood really difficult. But unlike in Serena 6, doing this without Flood is actually possible. Just maybe not for a human. This is a task created by someone whose name I cannot pronounce and will just be calling them Zelp. And it beats the entire thing without using Flood once. As you can see, they use this same barrel multiple times to clean off these 4 piantas, then clip out of bounds to clean this 5th one. They do this because the child piantas are so small that if they were to throw the barrels at them normally, all the water would miss. So they clip out of bounds and break it just below them, making sure all the water lands where it's supposed to. Shortly after that, they clean off these 2 piantas with some more barrels and make some long-range snipes to clean off this one. Then with another absolute snipe off this tree, they clean this faraway pianta and perform some more out-of-bounds clip to clean off this last child, which finishes off the level with under 1 second remaining. It might be possible for a human to perform, but they would have to play absolutely perfectly for 3 minutes, which is obviously not easy to do. But either way, technically, Piana Episode 6 is totally doable without any water from Flood. Finally, for our last shot of the run, we have another Shadow Mario chase. And this one plays out like all the rest. Warspy lures Shadow Mario over by some water and splashes him over and over again. Obviously, this explanation oversimplifies things, and it takes forever to actually do this, but yeah, that's basically the gist of it. But yeah, Warspy has now beaten every episode 7 in every single level, which means the only thing he has left to do is Corona Mountain, quite possibly the worst level in all of Sunshine. But he's not going to do it, because just like Pianta 6, doing this is going to require the skills of a robot. This is another task by Zelp, and it shows off how Corona Mountain can be beaten without Flood, and it's honestly truly insane. The first thing they do is a spin jump into a dive to clear this first couple of spites. Then they dive into this fish, which makes it possible for them to swim in the lava. This happens because the lava in this game is basically just water that hurts you when you touch the surface. So when they take damage from the fish, Mario gains invincibility frames, which allows him to bypass this hitbox of the surface and swim in the water beneath. After swimming for a bit, they run into another fish to get more invincibility frames and jump out of the lava and do a string of infinite wall hits to get on solid ground. This is the part where you're supposed to hop in a boat and use FLUDD to steer your way to the end of the level. But instead of that, they just do more infinite wall hits to bypass this whole section, then start performing them upwards to avoid having to use the rocket nozzle to get to the Bowser fight. What's even better is they can actually avoid using the rocket nozzle for the Bowser fight as well. You're normally supposed to use it to gain enough height to break these platforms around the arena, but by timing Mario's ground pound at the same time Bowser hits the opposite side, the platform will dip low enough that Mario's butt slam will be able to break it. After doing this 5 times, Bowser is defeated and Mario Sunshine has been completed with only 1,478 units of water, less than 15% of a single FLUDD tank, which is absolutely crazy. Now, Warspy actually calculated how much water it would take to beat the game if your only option was using FLUDD and we couldn't do stuff like use splashes and barrels, and the total number came out to 4,293 units of water. So by doing all the ridiculous stuff done in this run, Warspy was able to cut that number down by more than half, which is absolutely insane. I want to give a huge shout out to Warspyking for doing this insane challenge and letting me make a video on it. This is so far beyond anything I could do, so truly this video would not have been possible without him. I linked his channel in the description, so please check it out if you want to see some more Sunshine insanity. The fact you can beat this game with so little water is absolutely insane to me. Hopefully one day, if some more glitches are found, we can bring this number down to 0 and beat Sunshine without using FLUDD even once. Also, before we go, I want to give a shout out to NokiDoki and Zelp for finding a lot of the strats used in this video. Stuff like finding out how much HP the plants had and the Gooper blooper skip in Noki Bay were all them, and a lot more as well. But yeah guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next video. This video was made possible through the support of our amazing patrons. I want to give a special shout out to Rebecca Lyons, Nice Gamer Musics, Serena Bliss, Blue Pikmin is the best Pikmin, and if you say otherwise, then Louie will eat your soul. Also, this is a completely real name. Young Smokey VP $17, Clone Trooper Wheeler, Young Smokey VP 17, Real Backfish, Charm City Gamer, Young Smokey VP 17 for a 3rd time, and Editor Dave.